All right, we are live. Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa wala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, my embraced family, and welcome to our weekly Wednesday discussion where we are going over the book known as The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Turbulence by Michelle Alexander. Last week we finished going over the last part of chapter one, and so this week we're going to be going over the first part of chapter two. So just again, as a reminder, every week we're going over each half of each chapter, just because that each and every chapter has a lot of information in it. So in order to make sure that we all can have a comprehensive understanding of the book, for those of us who are not able to read the book themselves, we're trying to go over half a chapter every week just to make sure we're able to go over a lot of very important information that the author has to provide for us. And as a quick reminder, the purpose of this book is to educate the readers on the issue of mass incarceration, in which the author calls the new Jim Crow. Basically, the author argues through this book that the issue of mass incarceration is the new form in which minorities are systematically oppressed, specifically African American men. And we've been going over the chapter for the past couple weeks, and so now, inshallah ta'ala, we're going on to the first part of chapter two, which is titled Lockdown. And so essentially, the whole purpose of this chapter is to educate the reader on exactly how mass incarceration works, what tools do our criminal justice system use, does our criminal justice system use to uphold mass incarceration, and the issues such as that. So that's what we're going to be going over in this chapter. And as usual, we're going to first start with just a brief summary of some main points that I wrote down in regards to the first half of this chapter. Then from there, we will open the floor. And while we're going over, anyone who has had opportunity to this chapter, feel free to jump in at any time to add a certain point that you recognize that you feel should also be mentioned in today's discussion. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started with our summary. So the author starts the chapter in a very interesting way, in my opinion. He guys starts with kind of giving us a romanticized version of the criminal justice system. Essentially, the way that the typical American sees our criminal justice system, right? How we see them in TV shows, cartoons, movies, and what have you. And actually, I remember we spoke about this a couple weeks ago, I believe, about how we typically view the criminal justice system. Normally, how it's portrayed in our cartoons, our Saturday morning cartoons, our movies, TV shows, like being this perfect system that is always out to get the bad guy, defeat evil, and justice triumphs once again, right? I mean, when you think about the movie, the video, the show Cops, for example, bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? So she talks about that, and she kind of compares the romanticized version that Americans see the criminal justice system to how romanticized slavery was back during its time. And from there, she then goes into she's sharing some facts in regards to this issue of mass incarceration, how basically the criminal justice system is not as perfect and as heroic as we normally believe. She just shares a couple of facts in regards to the drug war. She speaks about how drug-related offenses accounted for more than 2/3 of the rise in federal prison populations that started in the 1980s. And since 1980, she speaks about how over 31 million people were arrested for drug-related offenses. Keep in mind that most of these offenses are, one, mainly possession, not from selling. Number two, it's due to non-violent crimes, right? So she highlights a few key facts about the issue of mass incarceration and how it has affected millions and millions of individuals. And then from there, she goes into exactly how does the system of mass incarceration work? What are some of the tactics and strategies that law enforcement and the federal government uses in order to make it very easy for them to incarcerate people for drug-related offenses so easily, right? And so in Charlotte, we're going to go over some of those main tactics that they often mention. So one particular tactic she mentions first is the reinterpretation of the Fourth Amendment. Now, real quick, I'm going to test you guys on your understanding of Constitution. Who here can give us a brief reminder of what the Fourth Amendment is? So like in one brief layman sentence, what does the Fourth Amendment guarantee? Anyone want to take a crack at that? All right, Sister Rashida, go ahead and remind us about the Fourth Amendment.
I think that was the one she mentioned is about illegal search and seizure.
Yes, exactly. Perfect. So yes, the Fourth Amendment basically guarantees a person's right to basically, like Sister Rashida mentioned, search and seizure. Essentially, this is the amendment that makes it where law enforcement cannot search your property without a warrant, without due process, and without probable cause. And she mentions how this particular amendment was heavily influenced by how British law enforcement treated a lot of people before kind of thing like the American Revolution, breaking into people's homes without any regard or due process, and searching people without their consent or without any probable cause. And so the Fourth Amendment is essentially our means to have our privacy protected, basically. You know, a police officer cannot just come and break into my house without a warrant. He can't just come and say, hey, I'm here at your house. I'm going to come in here and search your property. They can't do that without probable cause or without a search warrant. It's to kind of get it off tangent. When we think about Islam, you know, we know that also under Sharia, under Islamic law, the right to privacy is also very, very important, right? We know the hadith in which the Prophet said that if someone basically, they're looking through a peephole to look at somebody through their home when they're in their privacy of their own home, that person basically has every right to take a stick and blind them and jam their eyes, just to highlight the severity of violating someone's privacy, right? So the Fourth Amendment is just one of the amendments that kind of helps guarantee your privacy, right? And she makes reference to a case known as Terry versus Ohio, in which kind of changed the traditional understanding of the Fourth Amendment. Before, the Fourth Amendment understanding was basically that an officer cannot search you without a warrant or without probable cause. But she mentions that from this case, the understanding of the Fourth Amendment kind of became a little bit more liberal. It wasn't quite as stringent as it used to be. She speaks about how the Supreme Court upheld that as long as the police officer had reasonable and articulable cause to basically think that the person is possibly involved in some sort of criminal activity, they have every right to go and search that person. In other words, if a police officer can reasonably and explain in a reasonable fashion why he felt that that person was doing something suspicious, they have every right to go up to that person and search them without their consent. And she actually quotes one of our old Supreme Court justices, known as William O. Douglas, and he was actually one of the Supreme Court justices that was essentially against this reinterpretation. She quotes him as objecting to this and basically feeling that he objected to the notion that police should be free to conduct warrantless searches whenever they suspect someone of criminal activity, believing that dispensing with the Fourth Amendment's warrant requirement risks opening the door to the same abuses that gave rise to the American Revolution. And so Justice Douglas was essentially against this reinterpretation of the Fourth Amendment. Of course, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, depending on how you want to interpret it, he was the minority in that case. And so that's one tactic you mentioned. It was the reinterpretation of the Fourth Amendment, kind of seen as it's reinterpreted in a more liberal fashion. She also speaks about the issue of consent. That basically, as long as someone gives consent to a police officer to search them, that police officer can search them without any sort of probable cause or suspicion. Now, on the surface, that seems pretty fair, right? However, she starts going into some of the issues that go with that. So she makes reference to a case known as Florida versus Bostick, where essentially what happened was there was a man on a bus. These police officers came up towards him, asking him to show his ID, asking him all these questions, in a way kind of intimidating him. And then from there, he said, "Can we search your bag?" And he consented. He told them yes, and they found that he had basically a bag of cocaine in his bag, which of course caused him to be arrested. Now he tried to fight this, basically arguing that they had no basis to suspect Mr. Bostick for criminal activity, so they shouldn't have had any right to be searching his bag in the first place. And some of the lower courts were actually on Mr. Bostick's side. Basically, their argument was that when a police officer comes up to a person, asking for their ID, asking you all these questions, what are you doing here? People are going to normally be intimidated, right? You're not going to want to say no to a police officer. And so when that police officer then says, "Can I check your bag?" a lot of people feel like they can't really say no. They feel intimidated, so they of course say, "Okay, go ahead," even if they have something in their bag that they don't want people seeing. But the Supreme Court saw that differently. The Supreme Court argued, according to the author, that essentially that Mr. Bostick had every reasonable excuse to say no, basically, but he, out of his own voluntary consent, gave the police officers permission to search his bag. Due to that, since he provided voluntary consent, the police officers had no need for a reason to search his stuff, because he gave them permission to. But of course, like you mentioned, there's a lot of issues with that the author highlights throughout this chapter. This was known as bus sweeps, by the way, and this became a very popular tactic used by law enforcement, where they would just go up to people, start asking them questions. "What are you doing here? Can I see your ID? Who are you?" And basically intimidating them to give them voluntary consent to search their stuff. And like I mentioned, there was a lot of issues with this particular tactic, because you gotta think things in a reasonable context, right? No one, and she makes references to a few law experts and a few courts that basically said that the idea that someone would reasonably feel like they can say no to a police officer when they're coming up to them, asking them for their ID, questioning them, putting them on the what's the word? Basically, putting them on the spot, essentially, and for you to reasonably expect them to know that they can say no is absurd. And this is where they use absurd, right? On top of that, a lot of people, this kind of goes into it's very important for all of us to know what our rights are. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't know that they can say no to a warrantless search, right? And she makes reference to, I believe it was Ohio. I believe Ohio. They actually tried to pass a law or pass a particular rule which would require law enforcement to unambiguously inform those who they want to ask that they can say no, in order to make it clear that to whoever they speak to, they're allowed to say no to a warrantless search request if they want to. However, the Supreme Court, for some reason, she doesn't really go into detail as to why, but the Supreme Court overturned that policy, saying that it was unrealistic. So, due to the Supreme Court's rulings on these issues, police officers had the right to go up to somebody and basically search through their belongings as long as that person gives consent. So that's one tactic that she mentioned, and then she starts speaking about the use of dogs. I forget the word. Please forgive me. But the use of dogs that are trained specifically to identify drugs through smell. Right. So essentially, the Supreme Court ruled that police officers it's perfectly okay and legal for police officers to have these canines with them, even if they're not actively searching for drugs. So let's kind of like draw a scenario, right, to kind of get you guys up to speed on what she's trying to say here. So a police officer comes up to someone's car. They happen to have a dog with them that's been trained specifically to identify drugs, and that dog happens to start reacting towards the car. That becomes probable cause. Now the officer has probable cause to search that person's vehicle or their luggage because that dog reacted, even if now, and the Supreme Court basically ruled that the law enforcement having those dogs present was not the same thing as conducting a search. Thus, it's okay for them to have those dogs around without a warrant or probable cause. But if the dog reacts, that in itself becomes probable cause. So, just going to further draw the picture for us about the issue of consent that I was speaking about. You have a police officer come up, they have one of those dogs with them, they start questioning you, pressuring you, what are you doing here? Let me see your identification, are you doing anything suspicious here? She also makes mention how the Supreme Court, and this was known as Edgewater versus City of Lago Vista was known as the name of the case, where basically the Supreme Court upheld that the police could throw someone in jail for a simple traffic violation, even if the standard was simply to give them a fine. Police officers were given the right to throw people in jail for simple traffic violations. Just to kind of further add to the intimidation factor that police officers have when they ask people for them to be able to search their stuff. So when a police officer comes towards a person like this, has all these tools at their exposure to use upon you, it can't help but make you question: can you really consider that voluntary consent, right? And so that's kind of the picture that the author is trying to draw for us in regards to the issue of consent. Sister Rashida, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, in addition to, the intimidation and all of that, we have to also consider the fact that people are literally being killed for nothing at the same time. So people taking that aspect into consideration, they're going to comply with the police.
Absolutely. The issue of, police brutality, especially on people of color. So when you have this person come up to you who has the means to kill you, you're not gonna want to say no to them. And of course, many times people don't even know that they can say no. So these issues there. And she also, another tactic she mentions is the tactic of pulling someone over for traffic violations. Right. Now, of course, all of us one time or another has done some sort of minor misconduct when it comes to traffic violations, whether it's not putting on your blinker, not coming to a full stop at the stop sign, not coming to a full stop when you're turning right, when you're turning right on red, things of that nature. And most of the time, these are not really considered a big deal, but technically, a police officer has a right to pull you over for those minor offenses if they want to. And we're finding out they can even throw you into jail if they want to. And so many times the author talks about how police officers would pull over people at random, we'll say, for minor traffic violations. And from that, she makes mention of one particular case with Michael Wren and James Brown, in which they were pulled over for a minor traffic violation. And when the police officers came over, they saw, I think it was a bag of cocaine or a bag of weed in their car, probable cause, they're done. They actually tried to come back and fight against this, saying that the police officers essentially admitted that their reason for pulling them over was not because they violated a traffic or anything like that. They used that as an excuse. Their intention was to pull them over in order to search them for drugs, and them basically not coming to a full stop at that stop sign gives the excuse they need. So these two tried to come at them in the court and basically say that their motives were, unconstitutional. They shouldn't be allowed to do this. But the Supreme Court rejected their argument, saying that their motives were irrelevant. The reasons, their motives as to why the police officer pulled them over was irrelevant because technically they had every right to, because you were technically doing a violation. And due to that, that further empowered officers to pull people over for the smallest, most minor things in order just to get an opportunity to search them for drugs. Now, of course, like we mentioned previously, all because they pull you over for a traffic violation does not mean that they automatically are able to search your vehicle. But like we mentioned, what are they going to do? Can you exit your car? I want to commit, I want to do a search on your car. Will you allow that? And they commit, so that's where they get your consent again, and then boom, they have it. So they have all these different tactics, right? The drug sniffing dogs that can be around even without a search warrant, intimidating people to give them consent, the reinterpretation of the Fourth Amendment, pulling people for traffic violations, and of course, this basically allows police officers or the law enforcement to target whoever they want due to these different factors. And of course, the large majority of people who are targeted in these cases are people of color. And
hey, it sounds like it's brother.
Yes, brother Abdul.
I just wanted to add a point that I think is also very important, is that not only are they targeting people of color, but I think the main point is that they're targeting people in lower echelons of society, people who have from the lower income bracket. And one of the another reason why many times these individuals don't exercise their right is because if they are entangled in any kind of a criminal or legal situation, typically they don't have the means to fight the case, and they wind up getting more time or more fines or what have you, than if they just try to avoid the situation altogether. So that's another pressure on the individual to just comply. If I just comply, this whole situation might go away. So if they ask me a question, I'm going to answer it. If they want to search me, I'll allow it. Because if this, goes any further and I have to go down to the station, I can't afford bail. I can't afford a lawyer. I can't afford the fines. So all of these factors also play a part in addition to the fact that I'm targeted because of my race or ethnicity. So I just wanted to add that.
Absolutely. No, very, very excellent point, brother Lonnie, about the issue of a lot of times it's people in the lower income bracket. So of course, all these thoughts are coming into your mind. I can't afford bail. I can't afford to do this. It seems like it's my best thing just to comply. So all these different factors come into play when it comes to getting consent, right? And so it's very important for us to keep in mind. So we spoke about some of the different tactics that the law enforcement can use to essentially sniff out and catch those who are committing drug-related offenses. Right now, probably the first thing that would come to someone's mind, I guess, a potential argument someone could make is, okay, so the police officers are doing all these things. What's the problem? It's working, right? They're catching all these criminals who are committing drug-related crimes, so it's working, right? So what's the problem? But the author shares with us some facts about how successful these tactics are in regards to how many times they actually catch somebody. So she mentions that some studies show that around 95 or even 99% of cases in which someone is made to give consent, pull over for a traffic violation, what have you, someone who is basically a recipient of these tactics, 95 to 99%, 95 to 99% of the time, there's nothing. They find absolutely nothing. And she shares this one quote that I wanted to share with you guys. I found pretty it was both pretty humorous, but also just kind of pretty eye-opening on how law enforcement does these things. She quotes a California Highway Patrol officer where he says, "Gotta kiss a lot of frogs before you find a prince." In other words, they're saying that we have to employ this on many innocent individuals before we can actually catch somebody. So these tactics are not even that efficient. So that's kind of further adds to this issue. And so the last thing I want to mention in regards to this chapter is is kind of like what are the incentives for law enforcement to put so much priority on drug-related offenses and so much priority on the war on drugs. We learned about, the how, but the question is the why. Why is there so much emphasis and energy and resources from local law enforcement to focus on this issue when there are much bigger issues like murder, rape, violent offenses, things of that nature. And before I share with you the answer that she gives, I just want to ask a question to everybody. And that question is this: whenever the federal government wants the state to do something or wants state facilities to do something, what do they typically do? Who here can answer that for us? What is a very typical tactic that the federal government does in order to get a state government or a state-run facility to comply with their wants?
Withhold funds.
Withhold funds, yes, or
Would it,
withhold or
would it, I don't know, they talk about use of military?
no, basically I'm talking about no, I'm not talking about like throwing no, not throwing military at and forcing them to that way. Brother Abdul Rashid is on the money. It's just I need like the reverse of that. They can either threaten to withhold funds or they can
to give them funds.
yes,
Give funds.
absolutely, to give funds. And so that's essentially the answer. She makes reference to back to the Reagan era where the war on drugs first actually became implemented. Millions of dollars was given to local law enforcement. $1 million in grant funds were given to local law enforcement to make the war on drugs a priority for them. And there's actually and on top of that, not just funds, but also equipment, right? They were given by the Pentagon a lot of military-grade equipment in order for them to, I guess, effectively fight this war on crime. And I kind of wanted to share with you guys this one alarming fact that the author shares here in regards to what the Pentagon gave to some of the local law enforcement agencies. And so she says here that in one of the orders, it included of equipment for the local law enforcement, it included 253 aircraft, including 6 and 7 passenger airplanes, Black Hawk and Huey helicopters, 7,856 M16 rifles, 181 grenade launchers, 8,131 bulletproof helmets, and 1,161 pairs of night vision goggles. First off, I don't know what the heck local law enforcement needs a grenade launcher for, if you ask me, but
Exactly.
what do I know? But basically, the federal government, in a way, I guess according to the author, in a way kind of bribed local law enforcement to make the war on drugs like their top priority. So they were given so today we went over the tools that the author gives to us that that law enforcement had in order to make it more easy for them to pull over people and convict people for drug-related offenses. And then on top of that, we were told the why, which of course is through federal funding and even military-grade equipment.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Wanted to add one more factor to it. I definitely agree with you about the economics of the situation, but I also view it as a means of control over I guess select groups of people through intimidation and through fear. That incarceration has typically been used as a means to not only keep people in line, but also it's an economic control mechanism, because once a person has a criminal background, as we all know, opportunities in society become very limited in terms of employment and benefits, government benefits. So the incarceration was also used as a means of controlling minorities in this country. Alhamdulillah.
No, very good point, Brother Lion. That's essentially the author's whole argument in this book. Her whole argument in this book that, mass incarceration was used as a tool to force a particular group of people into a permanent second class status. Like you mentioned, Brother Lion, you have a criminal record on you. You lose a lot of opportunities that other people have. And so that's essentially her entire point. I think inshallah ta'ala in the next couple of chapters, she's going to elaborate more on those points that Brother Lonnie just made. But we'll stop here, and inshallah ta'ala next week we'll finish up chapter 2 from there. But now we'll go ahead and open the floor to any questions or comments from others who are able to read the chapter and kind of wanted to add more. There's a few points that I didn't make. So if there's anyone who read the chapter and wants to mention some other important points regarding the first half, please don't be shy.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, Sister Mary.
Yeah, I can't stay on very long, and I wasn't completely 100% tuned in, but they were talking about too, like, usually the war on drugs, it's locally, but the federal government was giving more money so that they can do more war on drugs. Is that Did that say that in that chapter?
Yeah, basically, yeah, we were just talking about it. Basically, local law enforcement was given the incentive from the federal government to heavily prioritize the war on drugs through federal funding and through providing military grade equipment to them. Sister Rashida, is there anything else you wanted to add in regards to what we went over?
I was gonna wait and let other people kind of chime in. But one of the main points that, I kind of wanted to make, because as you're reading, just like you pointed out, they did arrest people who had drugs on them, who were drug users or drug dealers, right? And so, you might want to be inclined to say, well, don't deal drugs, don't use drugs, and you won't have to worry about that. And that could be a sentiment of a lot of people. So let alone the fact that there are those who are wrongly accused where drugs are planted, et cetera. But, we could kind of look at the causes of both of those things, right? Those who use and those who sell. And just briefly on those who sell, I mean, many people are in abject poverty, right? We're talking about people who have not gotten a quality education, who don't have opportunities in the areas where they live. So it's kind of like a domino effect with one oppressive action after another, leading to this quick and quote unquote easy way to make money, right? So that, the selling part aside, when we start looking at those who actually use drugs, I had someone who was sharing information on the numbers of undiagnosed, clinically depressed African Americans. I'm not going to give the percentage, it was actually over half, because I haven't verified it. But basically, we're talking about people who, have gone through a lot of trauma. You're talking microaggressions on a daily basis. Microaggressions are things that people do that are just minor things like, calling a grown Black man boy, or things like that happen on a daily basis. So those are microaggressions. And then of course you have the macro ones where people are getting their necks knelt on, right? So you have that aspect of it. And so everyone has a different resilience threshold, I'll call it. And you can't expect everyone to withstand oppression, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says is actually worse than slaughter. It's worse than being killed. And we can maybe have someone, give us some tafsir on why that is. But it's possibly having to endure it on an ongoing daily basis instead of someone just outright killing you, subhanAllah. So one thing I would like, to say to those on this call specifically as Muslims, just replace the war on drugs with the war on terror. And for those who are innocent in being targeted and searched and their homes raided, so think about, the innocent in that respect to understand how oppressive and how wrong these tactics are, inshallah. That's all I have to say on it.
No, they made a very, very profound point, Sister Rashida. And kind of like we were speaking about last week is how many times we automatically view drug users and drug sellers as like evil, these evil people with all this evil and hatred in their heart, right? That need to be properly punished for what they're doing. We spoke about this a little bit last week. And we mentioned that, of course, obviously, yes, drug use is bad, drugs are bad, drugs themselves are evil. Of course, as Muslims, we're definitely against that. But like Sister Rashida mentioned, you have to kind of take a step back and think, okay, why are these people doing these things? Are they doing it just because they like that high, or they just really want to make a lot of money, or is it due to other particular certain factors? Like you mentioned how last week, drug use kind of increased in urban areas once a lot of urban areas kind of hit some sort of economic depression of sorts, because a lot of manufacturing jobs were being taken out of those areas. Due to that, people had much less opportunities for work to make ends meet, so they find themselves selling drugs just in order to make ends meet. And a lot of people, due to being depressed, having to look forward to in life, they find themselves using drugs in order to kind of make the pain just a little bit less, in order to numb the pain, so to speak. And so I think a lot of times we have to kind of reimagine or kind of rethink how we think about people who fall into these issues. Like I mentioned last week, there are Muslims, guys. There are Muslims that struggle with drug use. This is a fact. I've met some of them. I'm sure a lot of people here have met Muslims who struggle with this issue. So we need to kind of take a step back and think, what is the best way to help these individuals? Is the best way to throw them in jail and let them rot in jail? Is that the best way? Or is there perhaps more empathetic, progressive ways to handle those issues? All right, so Sister Nahila had her hand up. It looks like she stepped out. All right, is there anyone else that wanted to make a comment or had a question in regards to what we went over today? If not, we'll just go ahead and close early. I'll give you guys just one more minute. If anyone has any questions, comments, reflections. All right, Abdul Rashid, my man. What do you got for us?
I was just going to say that the author, she also highlighted the fact that most of these arrests, a vast majority of them are for non-violent offenses. And that's a point that needs to be, that shouldn't be overlooked because, they're not arresting murderers and thieves. They're throwing the book at, users basically, and it's for a non-violent offense. Like we said, they catch a lot of these people in the stop and frisk, and half the time they're not even committing a crime at the time. But then they get these, they get these long sentences and have to go through this long process, which they can't afford to in the first place. So they end up pleading guilty. They don't know their rights, and it's just obviously it's just a miscarriage of justice.
No, absolutely. And just kind of further add to that, I want to say Nahila, she has her hand up. But the author also attests that most, I think she's only like 1 out of 4 individuals are arrested for selling drugs. The vast majority of those are arrested just for drug use, not even for selling drugs. Just kind of further add to it. This is Nahila. You had something you wanted to add?
Yeah, based on what Sister Rashida was saying, sorry, my internet is really weak, so it keeps going in and out. But really quickly, that's, I just wanted to mention how important right now, how we're advocating about defunding the police and what that really means when we're talking about allocating funds to right resources, especially Sister Rashida was mentioning about depression and other mental health issues that we have nationwide, not only drug, but, homeless and obviously medical and you name it. When it comes to voting locally and really knowing what these bills or what we are advocating for, if you listen to them, I think it's very important for us to get educated. And I think we're on the right path as far as even going through this book, right? And understanding what everything means, because unfortunately, we're not taught any of this at school. Everything is sugar-coated and we're really blindsided. A lot of all of this stuff that has been happening, it's not until in our adulthood that we unfortunately learn. So I think it's just important for us to continue educating ourselves and our community.
Inshallah. And inshallah, I think we're going to be, we'll be continuing to do that, going over books like this and things of that nature. I believe, Brother Hasib, you let me know that some of our other core leads are going over some books, including our brother Lonnie, inshallah. So when they're done, we'll be leading a discussion on those, inshallah. But all right. Is there any other comments, questions, reflections? All right. If not, then we'll go ahead and close, inshallah. Next week, we'll be finishing up chapter 2. So I again encourage those of you who can to try and read the chapter beforehand. That way, we're able to all contribute to the conversation and all learn from each other, inshallah. اللهم سبحانك وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. There's a couple of quick announcements. Number one is, so tomorrow, of course, is our 2 programs on Thursday, our Revert Realities and our Hadith Rush. Revert Realities at 11 a.m. Central, 12 p.m. Eastern. Hadith Rush, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. We're also doing our documentary watch. Is it this Friday, Sister Nahila?
Yes, it's this Friday, inshallah, 7:30.
Right, so this Friday we're doing another documentary watch called the Holy Land 5, I believe is what it's called. Right, Sister Rashida? Yeah, I think it's the Holy Land 5.
Yes, I had a hard time coming off of mute. Sorry. Yes, the Holy Land 5. And we're also going to have one of the daughters of one of the Holy Land 5, Ghassan Alashi's daughter, Noor, that will join us and help to lead our discussion, inshallah.
So that should make it a very insightful, very engaging discussion. So I heavily encourage all of you to try and join it, inshallah, on Friday. Of course, Saturday we have our sisters coffee and tea chat, 9 a.m. Central Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And we're also going to be having our bi-weekly brothers meat and potatoes chat on Sunday, 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So there's a lot of activities going on, guys. So activities for everybody, inshallah. So please do try to join if you can. And with that, we'll go ahead and close. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.